Battle for the NFC's first round bye and home field advantage, these two teams are prime candidates. Who will be one step closer, and who will have the long road to the Super Bowl?
David and I break down this single game Fanduel primetime matchup in an in depth format that will give you all the important stats you need to be considering when building each and every one of your lineups.
Welcome to DFS Insights. I'm David Geistlinger, and I'm joined by my cousin, David Grant Jr. The teams up on the block are the Philadelphia Eagles at the Dallas Cowboys. But before we get to that game overview, let's go ahead and do a quick recap of the Thursday night football lineups that we broke down for you guys a few days ago. David, if you want to go ahead and start us off.
Wow. Yeah, that was I, the most biggest outlier I think of the season. We had we had a team that hadn't scored a touchdown, I believe, in like 3 games, and suddenly they have 3 touchdowns in the first half. I mean, against the Steelers, which was has a great defense, and suddenly Mike Tomlin, everyone's second guessing, is his time up now since they haven't been to a playoff game in 8 years, I believe, somewhere around there. So as far as the lineups went, I'll be the first to admit it was my game script was clearly wrong, much like everyone else's. I did see that in Vegas, 70% of the bets were on the under for that game, and it hit the over by halftime. So, you know, it would have been nice to have called that right and been in the 30%. But how did some of your lineups turn out?
Next subject. No, yeah. So I mean, basically, this similar. I mean, if you the audience, watched our last podcast, you can clearly see that, all the research we did, every piece of data, at least that I gathered. I don't want to speak for David, but everything that I gathered did not show that as a possibility. And obviously, this is why it's DFS and these large fields you always kind of plan. So I mean, where I'd say 90% of my lineups didn't hit. I had one that did okay. I mean, didn't make my money back, but moving on. Don't dwell on the past. But we have a great matchup here between the Eagles and Dallas. So I'll send it back over to you, David, because I don't want to talk too much more about my last week lineups. And you can start this game overview.
For sure, yeah. Man, this is going to be one of the most exciting matchups we've had all year. We're finally getting into that, playoff seeding, which is going to be super important for the NFC. This is a must-win for both of these teams if they want to have home field. My 49ers are going to be the other team that's in that mix, and this is huge to see, for the first round or two, who could possibly get the bye. So, the first game in Philly was close. Jalen is playing, he's clearly hurt somehow. Something's bothering him, and he's still putting up, solid numbers. It's just, I don't know what it is, but I'm sure we'll find out after the season what's going on. Meanwhile, Dax looked like an MVP candidate. He's been playing pretty much lights out football. The Eagles are at 10-2 at the league's best record, and then we got the 9-3 Cowboys. The spread is 3.5. And, we all know the home team gets 3 points basically. So they are basically calling this an even matchup. It's going to be, it's going to be high offense for sure. I mean, I think this game, I believe is the over under
51
I believe it's
and a half.
51 and a half.
Yeah.
And yeah, I could see this one going over, for sure. Lots of studs to pick from. I mean, AJ Brown, CD Lamb, both quarterbacks. Devontae Smith. So it's going to be a great game. How do kind of you see the game here playing out?
Yeah, I see him basically, you know, similar to, just just these simple, these ratings. Dallas has looked good these last few games. Philly was actually favored 3.5 their first game, and they did win by 5, 28-23, I believe. So, if anything like that, maybe Dallas wins by 5 this time. That's possibility. I don't know. Dak didn't look too great last time, I believe. This time he's at least putting up quite a bit. He's 3-4 touchdowns a game. So I see, definitely going to be high offense. Dallas does have a pretty good defense, but they still do give up points, especially to teams that are over 500. So I believe they gave up 30, 40 points to Seattle. Yeah, they gave up 35 points to Seattle last week. So
and they barely squeaked that out. They actually had to come from behind, and Seattle is a 6-5 team, or I think 6-6, I believe. They're right, So this is it's a must win for both teams for different reasons and the same reasons.
Yeah, a little bit of another difference. Philly's strength of schedule so far is 5th in the league, as well as Dallas is 31st. So Dallas's record still is pretty deceiving, right?
Yeah.
And he's like all the teams. Obviously Dallas has faced that are above 500, with the exception of the Seahawks was the first team, which they're about to be a 500 team anyways after probably this week when they go against the Niners. So they've lost 2. So it's hard. This game's going to be tough. A lot of offense. The Phillies defense has looked kind of shaky in the past few games, giving up 42 to the 49ers, 37 to the Bills, 21, 28, 23, 31, 17. So they give up quite a bit of points. So, and just fortunate enough, they also score quite a bit of points. So I see, definitely over probably the 41.5. It's definitely a sweet change over the 30 over under we had Thursday night. So I'm looking forward to breaking down these players. So I'll go ahead and let's send it over to you to start breaking down these quarterbacks.
So I'll go ahead and start it off with Jalen Hurts at 16,000. He is the most expensive player on the slate. I am quite surprised to see him at only 16,000 and not the 16.5 or 17,000. It looks like Fanduel is trying to be a little generous since this slate does have quite a few studs on it. I did find, my roster construction not being too difficult to fit in 3 really good guys. Jalen Hurts, he has 2 games all season under 22 fantasy points. So, and again, that was, he had 19 fantasy points against Kansas City, and then the first game of the season against New England, he had 12. But other than that, he's been lights out. 2 rushing touchdowns, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then he's got 5 rushing touchdowns in the last 3 games. So now he also has 3 fumbles in the last 3 games and 2 interceptions. So he's been turning the ball over, and that, you definitely cannot do that against this Dallas team, or they're going to make you pay. Kind of like the 49ers do if you turn the ball over against them. So it's, put it this way, I'm definitely going to have exposure to him. If I jump over to Dak Prescott, he's 500 less. Dak being in the MVP discussion, them being at home, at home, his home away splits are also pretty nice, just like I was mentioning to you about CD Lamb earlier today, and so they have that long win streak that they have. At home, I believe it's 13 or 15, somewhere in there. Dak's been playing great football. He's got 9 touchdowns and actually 13 touchdowns and 1 interception in the last 4 games. So that's playing great football. And with the Eagles secondary and stuff like that kind of being not so great, I'll be overexposed probably to Dak at the MVP. What are some of your thoughts on the quarterbacks?
Yeah, similar. Going back to Jalen Hurts. You kind of broke down, everything that I was going to say. They are both, freaking all-stars, and especially in fantasy sports. Jalen Hurts is going to probably get you at least 20, right? You can count on him for at least 20 this match. I can see that. I don't see him being under 20, especially regardless. If Dallas comes out swinging, they're going to be ahead, and then Jalen's going to have to start throwing and trying to catch back up. Or if they get so far ahead, Dallas has to catch up. Well, they're already so far ahead. Jalen's probably in there with either a rushing touchdown or throwing bombs to Brown or Smith.
Yeah.
Where he has fumbles in the last 6 games consecutive.
Yeah, that's rough.
He does have 6 touchdowns in the last 4 games. This is rushing. He only has 3 games all year over 300 passing, so it looks like he's being pretty efficient. And even utilizing run, he's almost rushing himself double-digit attempts. So you can count on those at least. I think he had an injury and he was really sensitive about it in a few interviews. So what's really going on there? I'm not sure. I'm hoping he's, if he was hurt, they would say something. But So last matchup, he ended up with 25.8 fantasy points in their last matchup. He was sacked 3 times by Dallas. So heading over to Prescott. First, 5 weeks. I don't know what he was doing. He was on vacation still, or what? I don't know what he was doing. I'm not even going to try to justify it, but I mean, they were winning, obviously, but fantasy-wise, he came into his stride, week 6, and I mean, besides Carolina, which I think he only had 16 points because they probably ran the ball touchdowns, and he didn't get as many. He had 2 passing, so not too much to say about Prescott. He's last matchup, he ended up with 31.3 fantasy points, but he was sacked 5 times. So it looks like Philly does have a pretty decent defensive line, and I don't know. I thought Dallas's offensive line was good, but they figured out how to get to Prescott 5 times last time. So, if he's being hurried, if that's not giving CD Lamb the time to get downfield, but CD Lamb also lines up in the slot quite a bit. So that could be potential for we'll talk about that a little bit there. But I don't think you can go wrong really putting either of these people in. If you want to save money, go Dak, you get 500 extra salary. Either one has the potential to be MVP. It just really is going to be based on the game script that you're following. I will literally have both of these people in MVP and add ownership, if not a little bit more. And it's going to be based on if I think Dallas is going to win or if I think Philly is going to win. I think that's.
And quick question: What are your thoughts on trying to fit both quarterbacks into your lineups? Like, how many lineups? If you're making 10 lineups, how many would you try to squeeze both of them in? Since they're both, it looks like they're both good for 20 fantasy points plus. You know what I'm saying?
So and if I had to put a number on it, if I was doing 10, just say 10 lineups, and then you can extrapolate this however. But I would think of probably like 5 different game scripts kind of in my head, and these are like flyover game scripts. And I'll be talking about this in a video where I go over how to break down like my thought process, construction wise. But like I'm gonna do a game script where Philly's gonna dominate. I'm gonna do a game script where Dallas is gonna dominate, and then you got to figure in those two. I'm gonna also have maybe probably 3 lineups in each one of those, and then in the Philly dominating, I'm gonna have they're dominating the run, and then I'll have one there. I'll have them dominating the pass. So I'll diversify that aspect, and then I'll have another aspect where it's not necessarily dominating. It's more of an even game. Break down the even game into there's gonna be some running, some this. So that's where I can see. I'm going to be using the 2 quarterbacks is in that balanced lineup where I think it's going to be a close game. It's going to be that 28-23 game. It's going to be that 45-42 game. That's because if you pick a quarterback, I mean, maybe Jalen Hurts, you can get away with it, but you typically want to pair him with a decent receiver.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to be putting $31,500 of your salary into those 2 players, and then having to come back because you're not going to get CeeDee Lamb and AJ Brown, right? You're going to have to maybe go down to those wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3s to justify. And that's I guess the only way I can see it with them. Maybe a long-winded explanation for a short answer, but.
No. I mean, we're talking about half, taking up basically half of your salary on 2 players, and so I mean, there's, got to be justification behind it, and I'll be interested to see the exposure of how many of the lineups do have that, because I mean, I'm pretty sure we can count on Dak and Hurts being the top 2 MVPs. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so. If you were to have one at MVP and then the other in the flex, well, I'm sure that's also going to be the highest owned flex position as well. So I'd be interested to see how chalky that would be, to where maybe getting away from that. Again, I'll have exposure to both in some of my lineups as well, but maybe backing off of that a little bit, because that does seem to be a safer floor, a safe floor and a high ceiling play for both of them. But anyway, enough about the quarterbacks. We can kind of hop over to the wide receivers. What are your or I guess we'll go to the running backs, right?
Running backs, we'll do running backs. It's shorter. Wide receivers, there's 15 of them to talk about. So let's get these running backs, dealt with. So running backs, I don't really see. I'll start off with DeAndre Swift. I think Dallas has a really stout run defense. Last matchup, he only ran for 43 yards. Their last matchup, Gainwell was the one that actually snuck the touchdown in that matchup. So, and he only got 2 targets for 31. So he got 8 fantasy points last time. I think Dallas has a softer secondary, which is weird to say because you always hear of Bland, pick six. He got the record, but Dallas has a weaker secondary than their run, and I would say similar to that with Tony Pollard. Not sure. He looks like he's 3 in a row, so he's got touchdowns 3 in a row. He did have some duds there, so it's like I guess he's doing things in 3s. If that's the case, then it's going to be a dud. But Philly, he only had 51 yards. He did have 5 targets, 3 catches for 12 yards, so he wasn't spectacular there. Philly only allows about 75 yards to running backs total, and that's in the last 9 games. Total average, and then also only 0.3 rushing touchdowns. they're 10th in the league in, against the run. So, take that as you will. I'll probably be planning, obviously, I will have a running aspect in my lineups, but I think I will be lower on the field with both of these running backs just because the wide receivers have so much more upside in this matchup to me. So, how do you see it? How do you see these running backs in this matchup?
Yeah, I agree with you. DeAndre Swift at 11.5, and then Pollard at 11. At least the RB1s are priced, right there where you can really pick either one if you're making a run heavier script. As far as them being able to pay off that price tag, I do see that being pretty difficult. As we just looked and saw Jalen Hurts, he seems to be the red zone guy taking it in, and if he isn't, yeah, and if it isn't, I'd much rather pay down, and I'm not just game log trolling, but I'd rather pay down to Gainwell at the 7,500, and where if he does get that touchdown, he's going to be hopefully, lower owned than Swift, and he saves you quite a bit of salary to be able to do some other stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then as far as the, RB2 for Dallas, it does look like it was updated that he's going to be good to go. Rico Dowdle, he's been doing well for me. I've had him against the Giants when he had 13.9 fantasy points, and I had him in the Washington game where he had 9. So, he's been doing well for me. I maybe have just been getting lucky and picking him in the right game, and he's at 7,000. So we got him at 7,000, and then Gainwell at 7,500. So I think those are some good salary savers, because whatever team's up towards the end and is trying to run out the clock, it'll be good to have one of them in your lineup. But other than that, like you mentioned, this is going to be more of an explosive air attack, the way I see the game going down. So with that, we could hop over to the wide receivers now,
right,
since we do have quite a bit of them to cover.
So just everybody watching, just go ahead and sit back for the next hour as we break down these 10 wide receivers, because I think that's really, in all reality, how many there are. So yeah, if you go ahead, you can start us off.
I'll kind of do the gloss over, and we can pop back and forth. So, I'm trying to figure out real quick. My apologies. All of my players weren't showing up in my list. Okay, so we got CeeDee Lamb at 14K. This is one of my favorite plays on the entire slate. Big surprise. And he's at 14,000, which is solid. I could easily see him being 14.5 or 15 or 15.5. So I was kind of surprised to see him at this price. His home away splits are pretty significant. Against Seattle, 26, that was at home. Washington, 15, that was at home. Against the Giants, 34 fantasy points at home, and then even at Philly, he had 22. So I mean, at least we know in the matchup, the most recent matchup they've had with Philly, and it was in their house. They were going to CeeDee Lamb to try to pull that victory out. So that's good to see. And then they were at home against the Rams. He had 35. And then if you notice, at the Chargers, he had 15, at San Francisco 6, at New England 12. At home against New England he had 12. At Arizona he only had 8, and then quite a bit against the Jets. So point being, put him in your lineups. I will be overexposed to the field on him. I hate the Cowboys, but I'm taking my bias completely out of it, because I'm hoping that the time I'm putting my money more or less on them, that they're gonna come through for me. Obviously, AJ Brown for Philly is just a beast. I mean, I've been watching him all season. This guy's made unbelievable catches. He just manhandles defensive players. I mean, it's like it's crazy. Um, you know, he's 13.5. You know, he also has high upside. I mean, he had his yardage is also one of his, you know, benefits. He had, going back to 925 at Tampa Bay, 131 yards, and then 175 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then 127 yards, and then 131, 137 with a touchdown, 130 yards with 2 touchdowns. I mean, and then recently against San Francisco's defense, he had 13 targets, 8 catches for 114 yards. So put this dude in your lineups, find ways to mix and match. You know, the next guy down would be Devontae Smith. To me, he's going to be that nice pivot play. It is actually almost tough now as I'm second guessing what I'm saying, because AJ Brown at 13.5 and Devontae Smith at 12, it's like that extra 1,500. I'm going to try to find my way to pay up for AJ Brown, but if I can't for whatever reason, Devonta Smith is a easy next guy to get to with high upside. His last, you know, he had 20 fantasy points against San Francisco, you know, one of the top defenses. He had 11 targets in that game, 9 catches, touchdown, 7 for 8 for 106 yards and a touchdown against Buffalo. And you know, in Dallas, he only had 3 targets, but he did have 3 catches for 51 yards and a touchdown. I think he's going to need a little bit more than that 12 fantasy points from last time to be in the optimal lineup. And let's just put it this way, play Devontae Smith. Moving on down, we got Brandon Cooks at 10K. This is getting into that price range where, you know, I could see him being, unfortunately, really chalky, because at 10K and he, you know, he's got touchdowns in 3 of his last 4 games. He has a ceiling of 27 fantasy points as of this season, where he had 9 of 10 for 173 yards and a touchdown, and that was against the Giants. And even against Seattle, who has a good defense, I mean, he was 4 for 4 with 45 yards and a touchdown. It seems like him and Prescott have been getting on the same page lately. So I'll definitely have some exposure to Cooks. He really fits well in many lineup constructions. And if we continue to go down, we got Ozauskas Zacchaeus, my apologies. He's at 8K. At 8K, I'll be under the field on that. I mean, it's the targets. It's almost really everything about what I'm seeing. But, you know, this could be that game where he gets open and he could be the low own guy who does get a touchdown. So never count anybody out of a lineup that you know is going to get a couple snaps. But I'll be under the field on him. Going down, you know, Jalen Tolbert, I really like him. I've been playing him quite a bit. His numbers aren't exactly jumping off the page, but, you know, last time against Philly, he did have 5 targets, 3 catches, 49 yards and a touchdown. That actually was his last touchdown, unfortunately. But his targets, you know, kind of seemed to, you know, 2 catches on 5 targets, 2 catches on 5 targets, and then 2 on 3 targets, and then he was 1 for 1. So while it looks like he might be downtrending, you know, maybe that Philly game, since they know he had a touchdown in it, that he's going to show up at home. A lot of times these wide receiver 3s, 4s, you know, the lower ones, when you're at home, you're just going to play better. as I continue to go down, we got Watkins at 6,500. I'm sorry. Michael Gallup. Gallup at 8K. He's definitely live. I'll have some exposure to him. Everyone should. I know the last 2 games he's only had 1 target. That's it. That's fine. If anything, that's good. The game log troll should be off of him, so he might be a little bit lower owned. I'll definitely have some exposure there. The other guy, dude, Turpin at 6K. I've gotten him right a couple of times. So even though his targets aren't that great, he does seem to be a guy getting a couple red zone targets when he gets them, at least, because he had a touchdown against the 49ers, a touchdown against the Eagles when they played. He had 1 target, 1 reception for 5 yards and a touchdown. He had against Washington, 1 target, 1 reception, 34 yards, touchdown. Against the Niners, 1 target, 1 reception, 26 yards, a touchdown. So at 6K, to have a guy that has that type of capability really opens up the lineup making. And okay, this looks like some new news where Julio Jones might actually be in the game. That does change some things. And he's at 6K. That could take away from Turpin, unfortunately. So I was actually counting on Julio being out. Since he's old, I thought they were going to really let him rest. But I guess since this is a big game, they want all weapons, possible. Yeah, I mean, I'd have some exposure to Julio as well. Those guys at 6K are going to open up your lineup. So I know that's kind of long-winded. My apologies. What are some of? I'll let David do a little bit of a deeper dive on some of these wide receivers here.
Well, my turn to get long-winded here. No,
Yeah.
that was good. Good. I agree with especially some of those lower ones. Just bringing it back. My thoughts on CeeDee Lamb. He was. So the optimal lineup, I'll say, for the last game: Dak Prescott MVP, CeeDee Lamb, Antonio Brown, Smith, Devonta Smith, and Gainwell. Those were the optimal lineup for last game. You can't do it this time. I plugged it in to try. I think you're 2K over our 1.5K over salary this time. So. That's a pretty solid lineup, and I mean, Hurts had 26 fantasy points, and he wasn't in the optimal last match. So, going back to CeeDee Lamb, the Eagles are dead last in giving up touchdowns to receivers and yards to receivers. So they give up on average 1.8 receiving touchdowns in the last 9 games. So basically 2 touchdowns a game to receivers, and they give up 205 yards to receivers. Now that's combined. It's not for one receiver. It's combined yardage. So that's insane. They're dead last, 32nd. So that's why I'm leaning away from the running backs and going more passing, because Dallas is pretty bad too. So
yeah.
Even though they have the plan to get those pick sixes, they still give up quite a bit. But CeeDee Lamb, last 3 games, he's had 8 red zone targets. So he's definitely, obviously he's on Dak's radar. So, and he gets just regular targets anyways. I don't really have to go too much over CeeDee Lamb and AJ Brown. Everybody knows, the potential that they have, and they're just, beasts. AJ Brown, just give you some things. 8 red zone targets himself the last 3 games. Going down to Smith. It looks like he has 5 in the last three games. So yeah, it just seems like everybody, there's so many weapons, it's insane. I like Devonta Smith. He has the potential, and saving that $1,500 from Brown, I think in at least this matchup, I think is going to help out just because there's literally 10 players over 10K in this, and like literally every single one of them is like, oh he could be viable. Like he's live. Like even dropping down here, and we'll talk about the tight ends next. But moving down to these, Michael Gallup, I think he's slowly getting pushed out. I looked up snap counts, and he's currently really splitting right now. He splits the snap count with Tolbert. Him and Tolbert basically, and Tolbert's been coming up and Gallup's been going down. So I don't know if that's obviously performance-wise or what's going on there, but I'd be a little wary on the Gallup play. I'm thinking Tolbert maybe is seeing a little bit more action, at least recently. And he did get a touchdown the last Philly game. Turpin, I think he's the clear number 5, so he'll be in a few plays. So he is viable to save some money, but just keep in mind you're really just looking for that touchdown pass like he had last game, right? The one target, one catch, gets you 7 points at 6K. Solid.
Yeah.
I think this is a sneaky play. Kez Watkins. So I don't know why he's 6,500. He is the wide receiver 3, or at least I see him. I see him definitely getting more snaps than Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was getting the snaps, but Watkins was hurt.
Okay.
So if you look at the snap counts before Watkins was hurt, he was getting the snaps, and Zacchaeus wasn't. So I might be probably more prone. I'm probably going to be leaning more on this Watkins than I will Zacchaeus in this situation, just because saving 1,500 from 8K is going down to 65. It opens up so much more. Julio Jones didn't play the last matchup, so I don't have really any stats on him. I just think he's like the wide receiver 5. Like, maybe he has his name. Will he get on the field? Does he have the potential to still be good? Absolutely. But I just see they have, we'll talk about, the tight end. Goddard's coming back. He's playing this game. So you got him. You got, Brown, Smith, Watkins, Zacchaeus. I think something would have to happen, or you just get another one of those 1 target, 2 targets, touchdown kind of things for Julio to be viable, at least in how I see this playing out. But shoot, I think that was us talking about wide receivers for the last 20 minutes. So let's go ahead and hop over to the other wide receivers, the tight ends, in this matchup, and there's 2 great ones to talk about. If you want to go ahead and start it off here.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start off with Mr. Jake Ferguson. He's at 9,500. I'll be over the field on him for sure. He definitely he's just awesome. I can't believe he's only 9,500. So, against Seattle, 8 targets, 6 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown. Going back against the game against Philly, he had 10 targets, 7 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown. He was on a nice little streak with 3 touchdowns in a row. Around, one before that game, one after that game. I think with this type of game where these teams are pretty evenly matched, the tight ends seem to come into play quite a bit to me in that type of a game script. And with what his upside is at 9,500, to me it's one of the best plays on the slate from a salary perspective and what his upside is. And then, like you mentioned, we got Dallas Goedert coming back. He, yeah, he's awesome. I mean, he's a beast. He's at 8,500. So it looks like the last game he was even able to play was when they played Dallas, and he was 3 for 4 for 50 yards. I'm just double checking. Okay, so he had a forearm injury. Um, so that I'm gonna do a little bit deeper dive, just on the injury,
Fractured
just
his
on.
arm.
Okay, so fractured. So I mean, man, the football is just so physical, and
Yeah.
tight end with with the blocking that he has to do at maybe they put in their other tight end for the blocking plays and put him in more so for the receiving catching type plays. But they're not going to put him back on the field if he isn't ready. So um, I'll have some exposure to him at the 8,500. If I have that extra salary though and can go to Jake Ferguson at the 9,500, I'll gladly pay the 1,000 up. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got on the tight ends. I'll just be honest, I didn't really deep dive much beyond that because I'm pretty locked in on Ferguson as my one of my top plays. So, what are your thoughts on the tight ends and what kind of exposure you think you'll be having to them?
Yeah, Ferguson's been a beast. He went off last game, 10 targets, 91 yards, touchdown. So he's definitely viable, and I think Dak's becoming, he's looking for him more, especially if if Lamb's going to be covered and things like that. Ferguson, he's a pretty big target, so I see him being viable 9,500. I mean, if it wasn't this game, I could clearly see him higher, but do I pick him or do I pick Brandon Cooks at 500 higher, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a tough choice for me. Goddard, it's tough to say. Like you said, fractured arm, tight end. I mean, however, if Goddard was healthy, I'd definitely be going for him, and I bet you he would be higher than 8,500 if he wasn't coming back from an injury. The only thing is Dallas is pretty weak against tight ends, so they're second to last. They're 31st against tight ends in giving up touchdowns. So if he is healthy, he is definitely viable, especially 8,500. You'd have to think about it for sure.
Yeah.
But and other than that, maybe his backup, Jake Stoll, he did have I think a few passes. He was really hoping for the touchdown shot from one of these guys, which is always possible. And same with Shoemaker, which would be Ferguson's backup. They're basically touchdown or bust kind of candidates. Which, if you're assuming there's going to be 8-9 touchdowns thrown in this game or scored in this game between the two teams, that is, it's got to go to somebody. Does one of these players get it?
Yeah.
So, moving on over to the kickers and defense. Kickers, I just see so many points happening. The kickers. I mean, last matchup there was only one field goal between and 6 extra points. So, I mean, I see the kickers being viable. They'll be good, but even for the price that the kickers are, you can get, Jake Ferguson, or Goddard. Are you gonna pick Elliott over Goddard? Based on how you're kind of scripting, maybe, or Audrey over them. They will get their points. I just see them being less points than the other candidates. I know they're going to be pushing the ball. I just see 7, 8 touchdowns and maybe 1 or 2 field goals. So I won't be going heavy on kickers this matchup. That's either of them. I will have kickers in my lineup because you just got to cover all your bases. But with how I'm kind of scripting, I'm definitely going with hey, this is going to be a higher scoring game kind of approach. So with that, moving on to the defenses. I see him, obviously you can pick them, but at 9K for both defenses, you're scripting that this is a low scoring game. I mean, the over-under is 51.5. So if you're doing that, then you're obviously banking on the defense scoring a touchdown to get those points back of all the points they've lost. I'll be definitely under the field on this one. I mean, I say that, and this is probably when one of them is going to get 20 freaking points. It seems to always happen to me, so I'm definitely going to have them, but it will definitely be in like that blowout lineup, lineup kind of thing. That 4-1, when the defense will be in that 4, So
yeah,
that's how my take on the special teams here.
Yeah, that's I'm with you on that. I mean, if we look at because you would think, Dallas clearly has the better overall defense. However, when playing actual contenders, when they played Seattle, their defense had allowed 35 points and had -1 fantasy points. Yeah. When they played the San Francisco 49ers, they allowed 42 points and had -1 fantasy points. And when they played those are the top people they even played. And then, they even had the Arizona Cardinals score 28 on them and had only 1 fantasy point. So while some people might see the 37, the 27, 21, 16, that just isn't going to happen to me in this game. Like you mentioned, by saying that almost assures that one of the defenses will be optimal. So in the blowout script, I will have, exposure to them. It will be very low, and it would be in a 4-1 type scenario, like you were mentioning, 4 Dallas people and one Philly, or the other way. And then as far as the kickers go, I'll have some exposure to them. A lot of times I actually will go both kickers in a lineup. I won't be doing that this time. There's too many other guys, like you mentioned, around that same price range that their upside in this matchup just seems to outweigh that. I don't really see this being like a field goal fest. I see this being more of like a touchdown type festival. I'll be sprinkling in the kickers here and there, but I will be under the field on them for sure. So with that, I think we could jump on over to the lineup.
Yeah, let's go ahead and jump over and start looking at your lineup here, what you have.
Yeah, so I'm surprisingly going for Dallas and 1 Philly. I'm going to go ahead and, people are saying this is Dak Prescott's biggest game as a Cowboy. And it's time for him to show up and show out. And he is playing at home. He has everything going for him. So I went ahead and I got him at MVP. If I'm going with him, I'm lining him up with CeeDee Lamb, because if Dak is going to have a day, it's going to be with CeeDee Lamb for sure. And I decided to go ahead and get Ferguson in there because I just was checking out a couple stats. I saw his snap count has gone up quite a bit, and some of his couple other stats that were trending in the right direction. red zone targets and his snap count. So, like I said, his ceiling at 9,500 is just too high to ignore. And then I went ahead and I got Jalen Tolbert at the 7,500. It'll be interesting to see, if I, right now the salary is zeroed out. That's the one thing I do not like about the lineup. I may pay down to a different person that's a little bit lower, but I am entering this lineup into the $9 tournament. So, he's 7,500. He did well last time they played. And I'm just kind of, put it this way, he was the last person as I filled in the 4. So I went Dak. I really went Dak, CD, Ferguson, and then I went AJ Brown because I was like, okay, well, I need to fit in the best Philadelphia person I can with what salary there. And, without being able to go Jalen Hurts, I was like, all right, I got to go AJ Brown. So I plugged him in and saw how much salary I had left, which was 7,500. And like I mentioned, looking at the lineup, it does kind of scream chalk, especially this is America's team. It's Dallas. It's 4-1. That, I will admit it's a little chalky. So if you were going to, not want to tie with a bunch of people, either put it in a single entry type lineup would be smart. Or as you saw what David and I went over, a couple of those lower owned guys, like Watkins at 6,500. Something like that, and pivoting there would be a smart idea. So yeah, that's what I got going on. What are some of your thoughts and perspective on the lineup?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a good lineup. As far as I guess the only quote unquote negative or criticism, obviously, would entering in the large GGP is the 0 salary remaining. That just I don't know why people think that you have to zero out the salary, and it just gives that lineup a higher probability to be chalky. Not that it's bad, but it's just because with my experience with optimizers and things, it's like literally unless you know how to tweak the optimizer you're using, and most some do, some don't, but they're going to give you the max salary, max points, right? So if you're getting these max salaries, everybody using these optimizers, that might be why a lot of these are as chalky as they are. You might get away with it going kind of the combination you did with Tolbert. I think there's maybe a little bit potentially better pay downs than him, but just with that 0 salary, I think that's like the only criticism. I'm not even a criticism. That would be the only thing that would make it like if you did happen to win the 100K, you'd be splitting it with 50, 60 people.
At least, for sure. And I, by swapping Tolbert out for Watkins, that does put 1,000 remaining. And then, if I'm being completely honest, I do see this game being close either way. And so going more of a 3-2 either Dallas and then or 3-2 Philly, to me will most likely end up being the optimal way, because each team has too many weapons, and because it's not going to be lopsided with one way or the other, most likely. I would have bet my whole house on the under on New England's game last night. So fortunately, my degenerate self didn't have that kind of money to do that. And yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good segue going over here to my lineup. And I say the criticism with the salary, but I left 500 too. It's just hard in this instance because of the players' prices. I had 500. Obviously, I try to, especially in these tournaments, these larger ones, leave at least 15. But going over it, Dak Prescott, I do feel like is going to be the MVP, at least. And I hate to put him there because he's going to be the chalkiest, I think, of the MVP picks. He's going to be probably the most owned in the MVP picks. So then I'm going to go CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown, which are also going to be pretty chalky, but at the same time, they're going to get their points. So that's like the one thing about FanDuels that differs from DraftKings. It's like you have to pick the people, like, especially MVP, that have the raw, fantasy points, because you don't have that negative, you don't have that salary multiplier in FanDuel's. So obviously I paired up CeeDee Lamb with Dak Prescott because I think he's obviously going to be that viable option. But I also went, which probably differs. I mean, our lineups are actually fairly similar. And we don't coordinate our lineups before.
No.
I mean, the only time I actually do see his lineup is when I enter it in for the recording. But other than that, I mean, I went Brandon Cooks instead of Ferguson. And I paid up the extra 500 because I think Cooks probably will get a little bit more points than Ferguson. Well, I'm hoping Cooks will get more points than Ferguson. I also went A.J. Brown, being obviously the best fantasy option on the opposing team. But then I also dropped down to Quez Watkins because I think he is a really good receiver, and he is, I think, now 2-3 games after his injury, so I think he's going to have a higher role. And I think if Dallas was smart, I hate saying those words together, they would obviously try to lock down A.J. Brown. Like, let Devontae Smith and wide receiver 3 and 4 beat you. Like, I mean, if A.J. Brown beats you, like, you didn't do your job. Like, that's terrible on your defensive part.
Yeah, but A.J. Brown, though, is that type of beast, though, who
Well, I understand that, but at least try. Like,
for sure.
Try to lock him down. Like, is he going to get his points? Absolutely. But if he gets his points and you have 7 people on him, well, you know what? Good for him. But you did everything you can. But if you're sitting there in man coverage on A.J. Brown, well, you deserve to freaking lose. Like,
yeah.
So I mean, that is what it is. So, but that's basically my lineup. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think what that tells us is how chalky our lineups are, since we didn't communicate and we both, we both went Dak, or we both went CD, we both went AJ Brown. So to me, that tells me that, you and I do this, daily. That tells me that most other daily people, this is probably the 3 starting, that they're going to start with, and then fill in the other 2. So it'll be interesting to see, this will be smarter lineups for those single entry, maybe some 10 persons, maybe some 100 persons. I'm doing some experimenting with that this Sunday with some stuff as well. And so, with the bigger entry tournament, you did at least leave the 500 on there. I like that. I do think going the Brandon Cooks over Ferguson is a good swap out if you are going to swap out, and I'll be interested to see what Watkins' ownership is. If he can be under 15% owned, then that's going to be just a great play. But it's like, are some of these lower plays that you and I are going to want to take some risks on to fit in the top 3 studs, 4 studs? It's like, is that what the majority of people are going to do, where we need to think one step further to not tie? But at the same time, the ultimate goal is to win.
Yeah.
So So be it. If you tie with everybody, but you have that number one lineup, well, you did your job right. You picked the number one lineup. That's all. That's all we can do, right? So, great great lineup. I could see it making money, and I'd also enter that into a couple single entries too.
Nice. So let us hear what you guys think of our lineups. Yeah, please let us know. In the comments below, we'd be more than happy to hear from you guys. Who would you enter? Would you enter mine, or would you enter David? What Davids would you like to enter in, or would you enter him in both, or both of them in? So we always find it helpful to hear from you guys too, to see like, hey, what do you recommend, things like that. Always get different perspectives. It always that helps us. It helps me anyways determine what kind of lineups to do and stuff like that. But yeah, let's before we get into our typical our predictions here for the MVP and the value play and the overall score, I think, David, you have another tournament you're willing to do and for people.
Yes, sir. No one has won it yet, but we do this with each Thursday night and Sunday night game. Make sure to check the description. There will be a link for Fanduel. It's a 100-person tournament. It's absolutely free to enter. It is open to the public, so it's the first 100 people to enter in. Go ahead and enter in the lineup that you think it takes to beat my lineup or David's lineup. And if you succeed in doing that, as well as taking first place, I will personally Venmo you $100. The only catch is you just have to email us proof that you like the video, that you've subscribed to the channel, hit that notification bell, and you'll have that extra $100 in your pocket, all at no risk to you. So that's a way of saying thank you for watching some of our content. And yeah, how about we hop over to those predictions?
Yeah, I'm determined to win it myself.
Yeah, I know, right?
Just keep in mind, I always like to do this disclaimer that the lineups that we do put up on the screen, well, maybe in this case I actually might enter it in, but typically they aren't the lineups that we play because it's different setup. We're going against 100 people instead of 60,000 people, so lineup construction is different if you didn't know that. However, that lineup to me is actually kind of a viable one in this situation, so I'll have to consider that when I enter the tournament. So yeah, I'll start off this time first. Maybe I shouldn't have. Hold on. Yeah, I think it's going to be Dak. Just how I see the game, I do see Dallas winning. Yeah, I'm going to go with Dak as MVP, but I think Lamb will be close second. Then Jalen will be third if I had to do. I'm going to do my top three. So Dak, Lamb, Hurts, there. And they'll all be close. I think it'll just be a matter of a few points. So to be honest, if you wanted to, change your lineup a bit, you can also throw in those other two that might help lower the odds of your one being duplicated and better chance to win that 100K. My value pick, I think I'm so dead set on Quez Watkins that he's gonna do bad just because I want him to do so good. Like it's crazy, but I think at 6,500, if he does come out like I think he has, at least the trends say he has, at least all the data says he has, he's gonna be the wide receiver 3 over Zacchaeus. He should be getting targets. Now, I'm hoping that happens. But that's going to be my value pick, would be Watkins, 6,500. You're really looking for, even if he had 4 or 5 catches, 50 yards, that's still great. Or, obviously I'll take a touchdown. But if he can get me like at 6,500, he gives me like 8 points, 6 to 8 points, solid. Obviously more the better. But if I can get 6 to 8 points for him, I use that salary on the studs who should get, and I picked the studs right, well, there you go. I think Gainwell was the low dog. He had 8.8 in the optimal last time. So there is a possibility that's, if he got me 8 points, he would be in the optimal. So as far as my prediction, score-wise, I want to say 31, 30.
Ooh, 31-30. So you're just barely squeaking it out.
31-30 Dallas. Excuse me. Sorry. 31-30 Dallas.
Yeah.
31-30
Dallas. All right. Yeah, I got, which every time it seems that Dallas has been tested this season, they technically haven't passed the test against the better teams. However, in this absolute must-win game, I think the stars might actually be aligning for them. So I got Dak at MVP. I think he's gonna just have one of his best games, and I think he's gonna look good doing it. CD Lamb's gonna be in a close second. Jalen Hurts, something's going on. Like I said, that I know the numbers are there where it's looking pretty good. Besides the turnovers, you can't turn the ball over like that against Dallas and expect to win. And something else, I just don't know. So because I have more question marks there than I do with the Cowboys, at least the Cowboys, even though they were playing those worst teams, they were blowing them out of the water. So to me, that at least says something. As far as my low own value play, I'm going to go ahead and go with the Jalen Tolbert, mainly because, as you mentioned, Philly's ranked 32nd, allowing 1.8 receiving touchdowns to the wide receivers in the last 9. So by picking a cheap Dallas receiver, I think that gives you a good edge. On making value or exceeding the value with one of the lower owned people down there. Him, if not Turpin, you know what? Yeah, scratch that. I'm gonna go Turpin. My bad. Turpin 6K. I can finally get a 6K guy in here. So for value, I'm gonna go with Turpin at 6K for the same reasons. I mean, it has to do with what Philly's defense is allowing and doing. And so that's my value. And as far as the outcome, yeah, I got Dallas. Man, I got Dallas 35 to. Man, this is tough. 35-31, Dallas. So I do even have them covering the spread. Put it that way. I have them covering the 3.5.
Okay, that's not okay.
I'm not. Yeah. I didn't have my calculator in front of me to see if the 31 was there. It sounded right. I was adding up the 4 touchdowns and a field goal. So, and then I got 5 touchdowns for Dallas. So that's what I'm banking on.
All right. Well, with that, that kind of wraps it up. Thanks for listening to us break down. Like David mentioned, we do break down every Thursday night and Sunday night primetime games. And here soon we will be heading over and also taking on some NBA contests. David is and I are pretty good at the single game contest in NBA. It's a little bit obviously more predictable than NFL. So looking forward to you guys joining us as we take off, the ride here in NFL, and then also over to the NBA content once that starts going. So with that, you guys have a good evening. Make sure you drop that like, that subscribe, notification bell, any kind of comments. If you do subscribe to this video, put it in the comment that you subscribe. Let us know. We like to, reach out and, say thank you and everything. So.
Yep, talk some football. We want to, we're here to help you guys win money, and any feedback from you guys, we're just here to build a community of people who like to play DFS and, watch some great sports and win money while doing it. So good luck to everybody out there. I'm not going to say go Dallas because I hate the Dallas Cowboys and I could care less about the Eagles, but nonetheless, I'm pumped to watch some great football. And, I'll be sizing them up to see who the Niners should be facing in the NFC Championship game this season.
Green Bay. And on that, everybody take it easy. Have a good one.